Good evening and welcome into Illini Drive, your home on the way home for Illini Sports, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m. Just another crazy week in Illini athletics. I feel like I've said that every week for about a year now, but this one was particularly interesting, of course, with the news that John Groce is out as Illini head basketball coach. We got plenty of good stuff to say about that, plus March Madness, NIT madness.
Less Mad March.
Whoa, that mic sounds really
Robot, Peter.
Robot.
You sound like T-Pain. We need to change that. Sorry for the technical difficulties. That is my co-host Peter Bailey Wells, not T-Pain, and of course Jeff Omer, Will Gerard producing, and Ryan Wilson doing the social media. Give us a follow on Twitter at Illini Drive. So don't smack it. What are you doing?
How are we doing over there? Oh my gosh, this is bad.
T-Pain.
It sounds so much more normal on this microphone. There you go.
Let's just start out today's show with the obvious. Initial reactions when you heard Saturday's news, and now that you've had some time to think about it. John Groce out. I think we all think it was the right move, maybe a little bit surprised. General thoughts?
Honestly, I'm not that surprised. I think I'm echoing in a way too, right?
You are. You sound a little bit less like T-Pain than I did, but keep going.
All right, I'll keep it up.
We can hear you well enough. You may as
bizarre.
well. We got to work with what we have here at WPGU.
All right, so I really wasn't too surprised to hear about John Groce being fired. I think after seeing how the team performed against Michigan, the way that they were behind 20, not only in the first half, but again in the second half, they really didn't give that Illini effort that Whitman was ending up speaking about on Saturday when that decision was made. So I think the combination of the Rutgers loss on the road and just that trouncing by Michigan at the second round of the Big Ten tournament really sealed the deal for me, at least, in terms of thinking that Groce could be fired. And once it was announced that the team was going to have a end-of-the-year assessment press conference at some point, that's when I really thought that the decision had been made by Whitman to fire Groce and no longer keep him as Illinois' head basketball coach.
Peter, your thoughts?
I mean, it's a shame that someone had to lose their job about.
I don't feel that bad for him. He gets a 1.7. Let's not play that. He gets a $1.7 million buyout.
Yes, but John Groce isn't the only one losing his job here. I feel for some of the assistants and the staff. That aside, it's a business decision that Whitman was going to make. I don't think it surprised a lot of people. I think it made sense. But I think that it was a classy move for Groce to speak at his final press conference. I think that's worth noting. And I think that all in all, this is like Whitman pointed out that this was a personally difficult decision because he's friends with John Groce, but that fundamentally this was a long-term decision. And he remembers 10 years ago when he was working in the Illinois athletic department and the teams of 10, 12 years ago at the peak. He called it, and he said, if we're not careful, that 10 years becomes 30 years ago. And I think that that's an appropriate attitude to take with Illinois basketball. The peak cannot be in the future. It must be in the past. I mean, cannot be in the past. It must be in the future, right? It has to be the next best thing, or the best thing has to be the next thing, or it has to be whatever the future thing is. And I think that Whitman made the right choice. And I think that he was very strong in his convictions about it, too. And I think that we've seen some initial signs that he's willing to commit the resources and to take this decision seriously about choosing Groce's replacement.
Speaking of attitude, I was a little surprised in terms of the two reactions by Whitman and Groce at that press conference. Whitman straight up said that today is not a happy day for Illinois fans around the world. If anything, they should look at it as a sad day because we're moving on from something that we thought was going to be great. But then you got John Groce keeping that same attitude that he's kept all year long, where he's just optimistic, kind of joking around, thinking that everything's going all right and going to be all right. So that was a little surprising to me. I expected John to be a little more quiet today, a little more humble in some regard. But it was interesting to really compare those two side by side as they spoke right after each other.
Groce's optimism. I'm no longer in a tube, although, well, yeah, I sort of.
Yeah.
If I step away now.
No, it's just bad. You should stay over here. I would say, I think what Groce had to say, his general actions, just sort of the mindset he walked up there with, I thought it was commendable. I mean, I think most head coaches who, lose their job a few hours earlier would just bounce, get the heck out of the way and just, fly under the radar for a few days. And I thought it was an honorable thing to do to go speak to the media. I think the sentiment that he gave was true to his form, true to himself. And I was so impressed by that because, I mean, you just lost your job, and this is something he's extremely passionate about. And he brought that same passion to that press conference. He spoke just in such a John Groce way, and I thought that was such a respectable thing to go and do that. So my biggest takeaway from after watching the press conference was, props to you, John Groce, for getting up there. And to Josh Whitman, you could hear the honesty in his voice. That was a hard decision for him to make.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kevin. I don't think that Groce made the wrong decision at all by going to talk. And if anything, if he wants a future in basketball and is still working for a future in basketball, I think that's the smart thing for a head coach to do, to at least put himself on the market as someone who's still going to be a positive coach moving forward. And he lets him speak on his behalf, at least in terms of his impact on the program and the players and his overall experience throughout the 5 years.
Well, and you look at another coach who had a post-firing press conference, and that was Bruce Weber. Slightly more tearful and a little more glum than John Groce was. Weber he had his family up at the podium with him. And was a little weepy about his time at Illinois. But like you said, got hired. And I think for Groce, going forward, it'll be interesting to see where his career plays from here. I was suggesting before the show that given the amount of money he's made and the stability he might want to provide his young-ish family, right? He's got all his kids are under the age of 10, I believe. Or one might be 11, but, younger kids, elementary age kids. He should consider taking a D2 job. He should consider taking a small college job. Coach a team that is competitive in its division and its conference perennially. You don't have to coach for a lot of money because he's already got plenty of that. He's being paid $1.7 million not to coach at Illinois next season. Give your kids a place where they can go to high school, where they can grow up and not move again. Right, because they would have made multiple moves already in some of their short lives, and coach kids and teach kids and do the things that he clearly likes to do and has some success, has had some success at in his career, and I think that John Groce doesn't strike me as ambitious necessarily. He strikes me as competitive, but not necessarily ambitious. So you do have to wonder if he could go to a place like his alma mater, Taylor University. It's got a history of basketball, and do good things there. I mean, I think that seems like might be a reasonable route for him.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. This isn't going to be like a Lane Kiffin situation. He can't get promoted or get a better job after performing poorly, or a Bruce Weber where he got another Power 5 job after getting fired. Now this is a little different because Groce performed worse, obviously, but with the resume that John Groce has here at Illinois, he's not going to get another Power 5 job without first going down. And I'm not even sure you're right. I mean, I wouldn't say he's not ambitious, but I'm not sure that he has the type of ambition where he really needs to get back to that Power 5 job. I mean, when you listen to that press conference, assuming he's being honest, which it sounds like he certainly was, he just loves coaching young men. He loves pouring into them. He loves recruiting. He loves to coach. He loves to be a mentor to students, student athletes. And so, what level does he need to be that mentor coach at? I don't know. I think it probably is fine with him to go down to, a lower division. He also is such a family guy and, very concerned about his wife and his children. And, he just gives off that family guy vibe where I could see him being so concerned that, right, he doesn't want to move again. So he goes and plants himself at a smaller school because, like you said, he's got all the money in the world, and that would give him, enough competition to fill that void. This is one of those guys that I think he loves coaching basketball so much that he can only take so much time off, right? Like, I think a year from now, he's going to have to be doing something. Otherwise, he's just going to go crazy. I mean, you're going to drink that morning cup of coffee, John, and then what are you going to do? So I think it's not going to be too long before he, finds his next home.
I really don't think that Groce would take a D2 head coaching job.
Why not?
At least not right off the bat. I think I could see him going just somewhere smaller within D1.
Do you think he could take a D1 assistant job?
I don't think he's going to do that, though, either. I think after getting this head coaching job, coming from Ohio to begin with, I don't think he's interested in demoting himself in that regard to a different seat on the bench. I think he's set to be a head coach, or at least in his mind, he thinks he's going to be a head coach moving forward. And I think the same thing. I just don't see him going down to a D2 school at this point in his career, just because he's so young and he's still got so much to prove and work for, let's say. I just think, if anything, he'll drop down in terms of competition, not the Power Five, like you said, Kevin. But I think he's still going to go somewhere where he can put himself on the NCAA tournament map year in, year out to prove himself and work toward a Power 5 job, let's say, one day, if all things go his way.
We don't know if John Groce is listening, but we know you are listening to Illini Drive, presented by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and information on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI-1. Online, fightingillini.com, or on the telephone, 1-866-ILLINI-1 for more ticket information. This is Illini Drive. We're talking about John Groce's firing. I think, we were talking a little bit about replacements, and it's tough to know where Whitman will go with this, but Kevin, he's not going to hire a search firm. You trust Josh Whitman to make the right decision? I think I do.
I didn't like that question at all. Who honestly thought that Whitman would get a search firm? I mean, this man got Lovie Smith on his own. This guy can get whoever he wants.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I saw a tweet that said something to the effect of, Illinois has always had the product, but they haven't had the pitchman, or they haven't had the salesman. But now they do. So they have both the product and the pitchman. And, I mean, as evidenced by the Lovie Smith move and virtually everything else this man has done, he's going to get a top-tier coach. I mean, this is unquestionably the right decision to let go of John Groce. And I'd say no doubt in my mind that he will impress me with this next move. Is it going to be Greg Marshall or... I have no idea who it's going to be. Like, so many names have gotten thrown around, as wacky as Fred Hoiberg, which is not going to happen. But there's just, I've seen, I think, probably 20 names by now. I have no idea who it's going to be. I mean, not even an inkling one way or another. You also have to kind of see what jobs open up and stuff. But so I don't know who it's going to be, but do I have confidence in Josh Whitman to get the right guy? Absolutely. I mean, this guy hasn't made a poor decision in the last year since he got here. I have full confidence that he goes out and gets a stud.
If anything, I'm just worried about how quickly he makes that decision, because with this top recruiting class coming in, I think it's important to get a coach, fill that void, and have that coach start building a connection with these kids before they start thinking that they should open their options up again.
Yes, I would agree with you, Jeff. I would just pose a difficult question, Kevin, and one I think that probably is only answered via hindsight. But you say Josh Whitman hasn't made a bad decision. Was keeping John Groce last season a bad decision?
I mean, you know that I wanted, as I said on the radio all the time last year, I wanted him to get fired. But I think that I don't think it was a bad decision. I think the best decision would have been to let him go. But no, I don't think it was a bad decision, because it was such a difficult time for him. He gets thrown into this job. Not thrown in, but I mean, kind of. And everything moved so fast. They go out and hire Lovie in, a few days. I'm sure there were obviously the inner workings of that had been going on for a while. But from the day he steps in office, they get Lovie so fast. There's just madness around the program. All of this crap is happening. It would have been really hard, I feel like, to also then fire John Groce and then go get a new basketball coach. That would be just like laying it on the table, and, I don't know. It might be going too far. So I won't say it was a bad decision not to fire Groce. I think it would have been hard to do that at that time.
Just making sure. I think I agree with you. And I think, just to mention hindsight, I think that given the information available at the time, not knowing whether or not Groce would make the tournament, but assuming he would based on talent, that Whitman made the correct choice in the spring. I certainly wouldn't second guess Whitman on that decision, because I think that it was probably the appropriate one at the time.
And given what Whitman told us, it seems that he really wants to make the smartest choice and really assess every given team to see if they're valuable to this university and if he wants to change anything, let's say. So I would imagine that he still needed to get himself used to John Groce, let's say, get to know John Groce on a more personal level and figure out if he was the right fit overall. And I don't think he could have just come in and made that choice right away unless he had been following it in years past. Who's to say he wasn't, but I just think he wanted to at least take a look at this guy on his own, work with him for a year, and then assess it at that point.
John Groce out as Illinois basketball coach, but the season's not done because, of course, the NIT. How exciting is it? Another year of the NIT for Illini basketball. We'll talk about the game against Valparaiso tomorrow night in our next segment. So we'll be back in just a minute or two here on WPGU 107.1, so don't go anywhere.
This is Clark Kellogg of CBS Sports, and you are listening to the Illini Drive. Enjoy.
And welcome back into Illini Drive, your home on the way home for Illini Sports. And as I teased out, and I'm sure you're so excited to hear about, is the fact that Illinois in the NIT again this year. It's a big deal. So we're going to talk about that. They're a 2 seed. They'll be playing Valparaiso. I guess I'll just start with this question, and I'll give my short answer to it as I ask it. I don't care about the NIT. I will not watch tomorrow. I don't think it matters. I think it's kind of embarrassing. What do you guys think about it?
Personally, I'm kind of excited for it.
This is the same Jeff Homer that suggested Illinois football would go.
Yeah, why not?
This season.
I mean, why not just
Optimism
watch the team?
springs forth.
If they win, though, like let's say they won the tournament, is that something you'd get excited about?
I'm more excited to see if this team can make it to the third round, let's say, and face Illinois State. To me, that's an exciting potential matchup that I want to see.
That's what all my friends are saying. I think playing Illinois State is a lose-lose game because if you win, you probably are supposed to, and if you lose, oh my gosh. Also, Illinois State players want that game really bad, and I don't think the Illinois kids, I think they just go straight out and they're like, okay, it's Illinois State, we're going to kick these kids' booties, you know? But you're not, because you're not that good.
Well, that's the thing. I think this
agree.
team needs to come out with the fire to, let's say, win it all, or they're just not going to come out at all.
I think for Illinois, it's better to lose to Valpo first round at home than to go play Illinois State and lose to the Redbirds in Bloomington Normal.
Amen, amen, amen.
I agree. It's not. I'm sure that's not
Also
the top
just-
thing. What's up?
Can you imagine how insufferable some of those kids that go to ISU would be if they won that basketball game? Oh, no. Just would be horrible. Fun fact also about Valpo, for those of you who don't know, and we're going to get into an interview with a fella from Valpo here in just a few minutes, but they were the runner-up in last year's NIT. Lost to George Washington in the final at Madison Square Garden. Nah, I mean, some people out there are looking for the numbers. I'm just giving you some of the numbers. This is a team that has some postseason experience, and I do have first-year head coach, but, won 24 games, so.
A guy like Malcolm Hill still has a lot to play for, though. Let's say if he wants to rise up on the NBA boards. I mean, why not use these games to at least add to his resume of list of things he's already done at the school?
Could theoretically pass D. Brown for third on the Illinois all-time scoring list. Imagine that. D. Brown, the winningest player in Illinois history, passed by Malcolm Hill, who never went to a tournament. Obviously not his fault that happened, but interesting comparison.
I think it's honorable that you are excited about the NIT, and I've got a couple of friends who are like, that's cool that fans can still get up for it. At this point, in my life, which has been relatively short as an Illini fan, I'm just like, I don't care. I want them to get pounded by Valpo. Just pounded, like they did against Alabama. I don't know. I think it was my freshman year with Nana and stuff and Rayvante.
Yeah, that was 2015. I asked Malcolm Hill about that game today. Did you know that's the last Illinois game that Malcolm Hill didn't start? Fun fact, that Alabama NIT game was the last time Malcolm Hill was not in Illinois starting lineup. And he was like, I was like, so I'm sure that's not a good game for you, but like what do you take away from that? Clearly you must have learned something from it. And he's like, well, Alabama had fired their head coach 2 days before the game and they came out really inspired. He was like, so maybe that's what we should do. It's like, yeah, maybe that is. That's a good point.
Exactly. Why not?
I mean, how hard? See, you're up for this game, though, so this is a funny question to pose to you. But how hard would it be to get up for this? I mean, I don't know, because if from my perspective, it's like a week ago they were playing, or 5 days ago by the time they're playing, which is, a very short period of time. They were in a game against Michigan where if you win, things get very, very interesting against Purdue, right? Like, you're still playing for a lot at that point. And just a few days before that, you were playing Rutgers in a game that mattered, and Michigan State. I mean, games were big. The magnitude was huge. And then now it's like you're playing in the NIT, which if you win, it's like, it just doesn't matter. I mean, realistically, the team's a 2 seed. If they were a 1 seed, I'd say it's a different story. But they aren't even, let's say, seen as the same level of a team as Illinois State is at this point. So you think that fuels fire, or?
I'd say it's worse if this team were a 1 seed and to go out right away. If they're a 2 seed, I don't think they have anything to lose. Let's say, because they were seen as the second tier of the NIT teams. They were under a team like Iowa, who they beat twice, under their in-state rival, let's say, in Illinois State as well. I don't think that this team has anything to really lose
See, I think that's a good point, but where I disagree is if they get down to playing Illinois State, then you do have something to lose.
Of course.
And so that's why I wonder. So then, like, the competitive side of me would say, well, of course you want to get to Illinois State and pound them, like, rightfully so, you know? But I don't know if they...
Like the little brother they are, yeah.
Yeah, except for we suck. Not we, that being the Illini basketball teams. I don't know. What? Do we have the interview to play? Any final thoughts?
Well, I think if anything, it will be interesting to see how the younger players on this team respond, because realistically, they are the Illini moving forward, let's say, if they don't transfer. And that's why I think that they would go out and play their hearts out as well, just to prove that Illinois basketball is only going to be moving forward, let's say, at this point. We got past John Groce, and now this team's going to be different, and they're going to show that to Illini Nation, let's say, in my opinion, come the NIT, and that's why I could see them making a little bit of a run.
That's eternal optimist, Jeff. I give you credit for that. I think that's a good perspective. Mine's just different, but that's a good point. Now we are going to play a quick segment from an interview earlier that our sports editor Charlotte Carroll did with, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Todd Ikow, the play-by-play voice of Valparaiso men's basketball. It's a very interesting interview. We'll play that right now.
Is just how do you think the events of this weekend will affect the matchup between Illinois and Valpo?
Honestly, I think that it's up to the kids. They probably want to play. I think once the game starts, whatever happens in the midst of the game, probably what happened with the firing of John Groce probably will have no effect on the game. I wouldn't think. You've got an assistant coaching staff that's been with him all year, and will probably be running the same system and making a lot of the same decisions that he would have made. So probably very, very little effect, but we'll find out.
How much have you watched Illinois basketball or kind of paid attention to it at all?
I think I've paid a moderate amount of attention. I've probably watched some parts of maybe 6 to 8 games and probably most of 3 to 4 games. I like the team. Obviously, Malcolm Hill's a tremendous player, a difficult matchup. Valpo played there actually 3 years ago, and Tracy Abrams was healthy then and played well in the game. I do recall that. And he's a great team leader. Maverick Morgan is a solid player. I think for a Valpo team, it's a difficult matchup. Valpo, for those who don't know, is far from 100%. Valpo's a team that probably, if they did 100%, would be in the NCAA tournament. But they lost one of their top players early in the year, Jabril Adekoya, and they also lost one of the best players in the country, in Alec Peters, in the final week of the season. And they're honestly a shell of what they were. It's going to be Valpo's going to have to play a perfect game to win the game. I mean, they're going to have to play near flawlessly to have a chance to win the game. It's just a difficult matchup. They've gone through so much adversity. I think in the long run, they're finally just happy to be in the NIT because of all the adversity they've been through. But it's a very, very difficult matchup against a team which right now is a lot healthier than Valpo.
With Peters out, who do you think has to step up from Valpo?
Valpo's got 2 real other high-scoring players, or players who could have big games that would give them a chance. One, Shane Hammock, who's actually a transfer from LSU, who's had a great season, second-team all-conference player, who did not play well in the conference tournament and probably led to the defeat to Milwaukee in the game. And the other player is Tavon Walker, who's a 6'1" guard, who's really explosive, can shoot the 3. Both those guys would need to have huge games for this game to be really competitive, I would think.
So is that the major key on your side, your perspective, is that those 2 need to have big games, or is there something else you think?
Well, I think Valpo's got to rebound well, and I think they got to take care of the basketball. They got to really rebound and defend, and maybe they can keep it close that way. But Valpo is a very good rebounding team. They've got good size, and they were bigger when they had Adekoya and Peters, but they still have good size. They've got 2 7-footers. I just think that, the athleticism of Illinois is going to give Valpo some trouble. And the other thing is Valpo trying to score. That's been the difficulty, has been able to score without Peters. It gets to the point, for those who don't know, Alec Peters was second in the nation in scoring for much of the season. He got hurt late in the season. He played with a broken foot, actually, for 5 games. And, of course, his numbers went down during that time. And then they found out the foot was broken, and he's been shut down. The difficulty is going to be scoring. Can Valpo score enough points to be competitive in the game? And then can they, again, defend and rebound well enough to keep it close if they're not scoring at a high pace? And that will be the telling factor.
Illinois has been consistent all season, obviously starting off strong, but then kind of tapering out and then coming back, but then also going out in the Big Ten tournament and then their loss to Rutgers. What do you think that plays in coming into this match?
Well, Illinois is an interesting tale because really, I think I look at their team, I think they're good enough to be in the NCAA tournament. They certainly have enough good players, and they showed that, I think, in February, where they rattled off, was it 5 straight wins in the Big Ten, where they looked like they were, they suddenly got back in the race after some tough losses. And the Big Ten has kind of been like this all year long, where teams have been incredibly up and down. And I think part of it is just none of the teams are great, and none of the teams are bad. So I think a lot of it is, Illinois winning 5 in a row and then losing to Rutgers, which was a disastrous loss, which they absolutely could not afford to do. I just think that's just kind of the nature of what the Big Ten is this year, and Illinois has kind of fit right in with those other teams. I mean, early on in the year, Nebraska won 2 games on the road, including a game at Indiana, and the next thing you know, they had lost 5 or 6 in a row. Maryland ran off a bunch of wins, and they had a couple bad losses. Michigan looks like suddenly the best team right now in the Big Ten, but for the first half of the Big Ten, they weren't very good. So I think a lot of it has just been the incredible parity in the Big Ten because there's no super team and there's no real bad teams. I've been following Big Ten basketball for about 45 years. I don't ever remember a season where the top of the league and the bottom of the league have been so similar.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's very interesting, very accurate. It's been up and down, I know, from our end as well. You mentioned earlier that, Tracy was there 3 years ago when Valpo came to Champaign. What do you think having guys like Tracy and Malcolm, who've been around the team for so long, adds to Illinois?
I think it always helps to have veteran players and guys who programmed for a long, long time. It's been a real trying season, I think, for Illinois, because when you finally have veteran players who are healthy, you expect this is the year we're going to go to the NCAA tournament. When they rattle off those wins, it probably looked like they were going to go to the NCAA tournament. I don't know these kids. I don't know how tough-minded they are. But I know, they're really solid basketball players who probably maybe feel like they have something to prove. Every school responds differently in NIT. Valpo last year thought they should have been in the NCAA tournament. They didn't get in the NCAA tournament. The kids felt they had something to prove, and they went all the way to the championship game of the NIT. And they beat really good teams soundly, like St. Mary's and Florida State, because those kids wanted something to prove. And they came out and they played real hard. I've been around the college basketball game for a long time, and I've seen where some teams are in the NIT and have actually no interest to be in the NIT, and they get blown out in the first round. I would assume these kids have been involved in the game for a long time, good kids, that they're going to come out and they're going to play hard. And Illinois, I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois made a big run in the NIT.
And then kind of on the opposite end of that, Chanel Lucas and Kipper Nichols have been great young players. Have you seen them at all, and what do you think of them?
Yeah, I think solid. I really think whoever gets let's put it this way. I think whoever gets the Illinois job, I think the program's going to be in good shape. I think it's a great program. They've got some solid young players this year. They have a great recruiting class coming in next year, and the big job is going to be bringing in a head coach who's able to keep those players. And I think the program is going to be fine. I think they've got they've got good young players. They've got good young players coming in next year if they can keep those players. And I think although they've got some veterans they're going to lose this year, I think the program moving forward is in good shape.
And then kind of you mentioned that moving to the future of Illinois coaching, where do you place the validity of the Bryce Drew moving to Illinois rumors? I know you're family friends with him.
I tell you what, the whole key is, not the whole key, but one of the keys is Bryce's associate head coach at Vanderbilt is Roger Powell, who's, of course, an Illini legend, who's a tremendous recruiter. I don't know if Bryce Drew would leave Vanderbilt for Illinois. I think he would listen. I think there's going to be a good chance that Scott Drew would leave Baylor for Illinois. And if either of those two coaches leave their current schools where they've done phenomenal jobs and end up at Illinois, Illinois's got a great head coach. I think there's a lot of guys out there that are good names that I've seen already talked about. But I think at the top of the list should be either Bryce or Scott Drew, and I think they should at least be talked to. I think it would be more likely that Scott would leave Baylor for Illinois than Bryce, who's only been at Vanderbilt for 1 year, to leave and go to Illinois. And I think if Illinois ended up with, again, either they'd be in great shape. I think, honestly, personally, and I haven't talked to either of them about the job, I think Scott would be more likely to leave Baylor and would do a tremendous job in Illinois.
Hey, this is Susanna Collins with Comcast Sportsnet, and you're listening to the Illini Drive.
Illini Drive, WPGU 107.1. Unfortunately, we're going to be moving to talk about March Madness, and once again this year, or the reason I said unfortunately, is that we can't talk about Illinois partaking in the madness. Well, I guess it depends on how mad you think the NIT is. Some on our show think it's more mad than others. But we're really excited to talk about the tournament because this really is like the greatest time of the year. Like, it's so much better than the NBA playoffs, in my opinion. It's just a lot of fun. So we're going to just sort of like work our way through the regions. Disclaimer, whatever I say, do not let it impact how you fill out your bracket. I don't know what I'm talking about, just like all these guys who talk on the radio, and they don't know. When they say that they think, flipping Vermont is going to beat Purdue, they don't know the thing about Vermont. It's ridiculous. But anyway, we're going to move our way through here. We'll start with the top. I call them top left, bottom left, top, but I guess it's called the East, but whatever, top left. Villanova the 1, Duke the 2, who's the 3 there?
Baylor.
Baylor. Florida the 4, Virginia the 5, SMU's the 6. This is a really loaded region. I guess that's my first takeaway. I'm not going to go through every team.
Wisconsin an 8, though?
Wisconsin an 8, which a lot of people think is ridiculous. I mean, Minnesota's a 5 and Wisconsin's an 8. What? I mean, that's absurd. Unreal. So talk me through this. I mean, we're not going to go matchup by matchup, but Jeff, Peter, thoughts initially when you look at this region?
Villanova got kind of screwed here.
Shafted.
Really
Shafted.
Toasted over a nice fire. I like Wisconsin as an 8. I think they stand a decent chance at upsetting Villanova. Obviously, the Wildcats are really, really good. You don't get the number 1 overall seed without being really, really good. But most handsome coach by Kevin's assessment. Or how about Eric Musselman from Nevada, who ripped his shirt off literally to the name? Look it up. His name is spelled muscle like the aquatic animal or creature, but he ripped his shirt off to show his muscles body muscles after Nevada won the WAC tournament. Kind of goofy. There he is. Yeah. Anyway, like Wisconsin, really like SMU, home of the guy who I think should be Illinois' target. Well, I don't know if he should be Illinois' target, but who I think would be a really ideal fit for Illinois' head coaching job. That's Tim Jankovich, former UI assistant under Sell, former ISU head coach. They're 30-4 in the American Conference. I think they're better than that 3 seed Baylor. I like them in that matchup. And I think Duke, recent struggles or recent regular season struggles, totally put aside by how well they played in the ACC tournament. That's going to be a fun region. I think Virginia's a good team. You just have a lot of fun teams eligible. I feel like they're one of any 6 teams could pop out from this region.
To me, I really think it's going to be Villanova and Duke. It's going to be the 1 and 2 playing all the way through. I think for me, if anything, Villanova will find its way out first because of a team like Wisconsin. I think Duke's playing really well right now overall, coming out of the Big East tournament or the ACC tournament, on top. I don't see either of those teams falling in this region, honestly. Just taking a look at it right now, Baylor is a 3 seed. I don't think they're that strong, and I don't think they'd have the power to take out a Duke. They got a key injury, so I don't think as a 4 seed they're as good as they could be. And Virginia didn't look that strong in the ACC tournament, so I don't think Villanova should have any problems with the team in their bracket before that Elite 8 matchup potentially with Duke.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the funny thing about this division, my biggest takeaway, is that I don't think the 3, 4, 5, like you said, are dangerous at all but I actually think the 6, 8, and 10 are all extremely dangerous. I mean, starting with SMU, Pete already talked about them. They're really good. I mean, they don't play a lot of teams, but look at the big teams they did play. I mean, I think that's a legit program right there, motivated to get on the national spotlight. I think they're dangerous. I think Wisconsin as an 8 is unbelievably dangerous. I mean, you just don't want to play that team in March.
That's stacked with guys who went to the Final Four and played with Frank, played a lot of basketball. Nigel Hayes, Bronson King played a lot of basketball, not to mention Ethan Happ, who was definitely the Big Ten's second best player, in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, that's a dangerous team as an 8. I feel like Villanova as the best team in college basketball this year got absolutely screwed. And then I looked to the 10, Marquette. I mean, they knocked off Villanova earlier this year. They're the most efficient shooting team in the nation. That's a fact. Saw that earlier today. At the same time, they play the second worst defense in their conference, second only to DePaul, who really sucks. But they just score like hell, and I think that's always a good thing come March. But then again, if they beat South Carolina, they have Duke in the second round, and Duke is playing great basketball right now. So overall, I just think that this region is really good, even if the 3, 4, 5 isn't great. Baylor, Florida, Virginia, I don't think any of those teams scare me or anyone too much. But with Villanova and Duke as your 1 and 2, and then some really good higher seeds, I think this could be a really interesting division or whatever region, and I think one that we'll be watching very closely throughout March.
Shall we move to the West, which would put us down to the bottom left? If we're going by Kevin's geography, the way you see it on your bracket. Gonzaga is the 1 in this region, Arizona the 2, Florida State the 3, West Virginia the 4, Notre Dame the 5, 6 is Maryland, 7 St. Mary's, 8 seed the Northwestern Wildcats in their inaugural NCAA tournament, 9 Vanderbilt, 10 VCU, Xavier's the 11, Princeton's 12, 13 is Bucknell, Florida Gulf Coast gets the 14, 15 is North Dakota, and then we get 16 South Dakota State. What strikes you of this region, fellas, other than, of course, the fact that Chris Collins and the Big Cats got in their first dance?
Aside from that, I think the one thing that struck me initially as I was watching the reveal of this side of the bracket, I didn't like how they put Gonzaga with St. Mary's, because we've seen that matchup 3 times now already this season. I don't understand why they would put those two in a spot to play each other in the Elite Eight. I like to see them spread out more, especially just because they're in the same conference and the only 2 teams, I believe, from that conference to be
That's correct.
in the tournament. So to me, it didn't make sense for them to be together. But also, speaking of Northwestern, I'm just going to add to that point of it being their first tournament. Just thinking about it right now, how special would it be for them to, let's say, upset a number 1 seed?
They got a really good draw. Northwestern got a really good draw.
I don't know. I think it's possible that they could upset Gonzaga. But with that being said, I do think Gonzaga is a really strong team as well.
I think the thing that Northwestern lucked out, I think, a little bit with Vanderbilt. I think that they've got Vanderbilt's a feisty team and had to beat some bigger dogs to get in. But I still think that Northwestern has played solidly enough, and assuming Scotty Lindsey's all right, everything there is clicking the way that it should be. Had some good upsets the last month of the season. I think Northwestern's in a position to have a really interesting round of 32 matchup with Gonzaga. Gonzaga's definitely the weakest 1 seed. We see that year in, year out with them when they get this top spot. They just are not as good because they're not as tested as some of the big power conference teams. So I think that that's dangerous. I think, and even if you're Gonzaga, you get past Northwestern into the Sweet 16, a potential matchup with West Virginia or Notre Dame. Both of those teams are strong. Notre Dame finished really, really well in the ACC, right? And West Virginia, we saw Illinois play them and just get skunked. Bobby Huggins, Huggy Bear, love to see him in March, right? He knows what to do. So that's not a friendly region if you're Gonzaga. And then if you look at the bottom half of that bracket, Florida State, another Illinois opponent of the year, freakishly athletic, can definitely play with anyone. Maryland, we got Melo Trimble, of course, and Xavier's been strong. And then that 7-10, I mean, Jeff talked about not loving St. Mary's and Gonzaga being in the same bracket, but I love that. Arizona's going to have to face a real dynamite team, either VCU or St. Mary's, whichever comes out of that 7-10 matchup is not fun. This is not the year to be a number 1 or a number 2 seed. With the way that some of these 7, 10, and 8, 9s shape up, I mean, there's some games that I would not want to have to play if I'm, and I don't want to play either of those teams if I'm Arizona. I'm not sure I want to play Northwestern if I'm Gonzaga. And like we talked about with Villanova, definitely don't want to play either Wisconsin or Virginia Tech. It's one of those, a lot of these second-round matchups can prove to be banana peels, and we may see a 1 seed not make it to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and you mentioned how in the top left region, I gotta, what is it actually called? The East. You mentioned that you could see, Peter, one of a few teams coming out of it. How about this region? I mean, how many teams could come out of this? Seriously. Obviously Gonzaga has a chance at the 1. Arizona, always a very good program. They usually make it to like the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, then get bounced. But that's a team that could come out. Northwestern's dangerous. Notre Dame, West Virginia, that VCU, St. Mary's, they could be a Cinderella story. Maryland is a team I wouldn't want to face at all because that just smells like Kemba Walker and UConn, right? With the way Melo Trimble can ball. And I think he has a lot riding on this personally after, if you followed that story at all. He, had a good chance at the NBA. He thought after his sophomore year, after his freshman year, he played his sophomore year, he'd be a top pick. Had a bad for him sophomore year, comes back. So things are interesting there. He has a lot to prove there. And I just feel like that really gets me thinking about the Kemba Walker or Trey Burke or something like that where a guard just takes over. So I think Melo Trimble in Maryland is very dangerous. So I just don't know who's going to come out of this region.
To me, I think it's seeds 1 through 5 that have the highest chance of coming out of this region. Yep. I don't think when you get to a team like Maryland, just because of how much they depend on Melo Trimble to play.
They could pull an upset or two, but I'm not sure they win the region.
Yeah, I don't think they can get all the way to the Elite 8, let's say, to have a chance at winning that region.
I think with the nature of Gonzaga being a week 1 seed, keep an eye out for those 2 ACC teams, Notre Dame, Florida State. I mean, that conference was so deep this year. Those guys have played a lot of pressure-packed basketball. So keep an eye out for those 2 teams to push the number 1 and the number 2 seeds. Keep an eye out for either of those teams getting into the Final Four because there's enough experience there. There's enough of a pressure cooker that they went through in the conference schedule that they have the ability and the talent to get there.
Let's each do a couple of predictions we should actually do this for the East as well. For the West, give me a bold prediction. Could be throughout anything in there, whether it's a first round or a Final Four pick, whatever. And then give me who you think is going to come out of the region. Do this for both the East and the West. Anybody ready for that?
Let's see. Which one you want to start with? The East first? Okay.
Yeah.
Bold? You want bold predictions?
You want a bold. I don't know. This isn't terribly bold, but I like... I'll probably keep it chalk in the Elite 8. I like Villanova and Duke, despite all the fun teams. I think we see SMU make a push to the Sweet 16. I think, we could see a team like, I don't know. I think you could see Marquette push Duke. I think you could see Wisconsin push Villanova, but I think Villanova probably pops out of this region. I think despite how tough it is, this is a team that won the national championship on a last-minute shot last year. They know pressure like nobody else. So I think I probably would give it to them, but that's not relatively bold. I think I'm a little worried about that pick. That's just probably where I feel that things are going right now.
For me, I would say my bold prediction is Wisconsin and Duke in the Elite 8. Just thinking that Wisconsin can upset Nova and then from there just cruise to the Elite 8 like Wisconsin seems to do year in and year out. I think in that matchup, Duke ends up winning, at least just based on what I've seen. That offense is ridiculous, and I think they would run Wisconsin out of the gym. But Wisconsin's experience is one thing that makes me think that they could always be in it until, that final bell rings.
Yeah, I like that prediction. My not so bold prediction is that I do think Villanova comes out of this. My bold prediction is that it's going to take a buzzer beater from Duke to beat Marquette. Those are my boys up in Marquette. That's my brother's alma mater. So I think that's going to be a really good game. They're going to score a ton of points on both sides. I think that goes down to the end. Duke wins on a buzzer beater. You heard it here. Down to the West. Gosh, it is so hard to pick who's coming out of this. Your guys' thoughts?
I like Huggy Bear. Give me West Virginia, the 4 seed. Give me West Virginia. I think that they're Take Me Home Country Road, West Virginia. One of my favorite songs. Not really, but it's a good one. I like them. They're a 4 seed. They played in a not that competitive Big 12, but still got some good non-conference wins. Got some. We saw them against Illinois. Really trounce an Illinois team that was hot and looking to make some waves non-conference. I like West Virginia's chance of beating Gonzaga, and I think that they won't probably have to play Arizona in the Elite Eight. I think that one of those teams, be it Maryland, Florida State, even like a VCU or a Xavier, if they get hot, could knock off the Wildcats. I just don't trust them well enough to get all the way to the Elite Eight. I think poor Sean Miller's streak of no Final Fours continues, and I think that I like West Virginia to pop out of that quadrant.
For me, I think it's Notre Dame coming out on the top half of that side of the bracket. If you're going to ask for a bold prediction, because honestly, I think it could be Gonzaga. I don't have any lost faith for that Gonzaga
bold.
team.
Yeah, I think that's bold.
And yeah, maybe Gonzaga is the bold pick just because no one thinks that they're going to get out. I think it's going to be at least a Notre Dame-Gonzaga Sweet 16 matchup there. And then on the bottom half, I think it's Florida State or, I don't know. I don't want to say Arizona just to follow suit and go like 2-3.
Go
but
chalk.
I just don't think a team like St. Mary's or VCU is really that good to beat a team as like Arizona or Florida State, and that's why I think it's one of those two on that bottom half.
Just a reminder, you're listening to Illini Drive on WPGU 1071, brought to you by the Illinois Fighting Illini. For tickets and information on the Illini, visit fightingillini.com or call 1-866-ILLINI-1. On the web, fightingillini.com, or on the telephone, 1-866-ILLINI-1, $5 Illini student tickets for the Valparaiso Round 1 of the NIT. We right now are not talking about the NIT, however. We're talking about the NCAA tournament. What's our next region, Kev?
We go up to the Midwest. Where also I never made my pick of who's going to come out of the bottom left, but I'm not gonna tell you because I have no idea. I haven't filled out a bracket yet. Although watch out for Maryland. Although everyone's down on them, watch out for Mello. Okay, yeah, we got this is once again. I think this is just an interesting year in college basketball because the parity is unbelievable. So I keep saying, oh, what an interesting region. I think they all are. So Kansas, the 1, Louisville, the 2, Oregon, the 3. It's Oregon, not Oregon, people. It's 2017. We need to learn this.
Oregon.
It's Oregon.
It's Oregon.
It's like a gun. Oregon, 3. Purdue, the 4, a team that Illini fans know well, all too well, I would say. The 5 is Iowa State. The 6, Creighton. Doug McDermott no longer plays there, if you were wondering. Number 7, Michigan. They're hot. Really hot. Crushed Illinois. Just destroyed everybody on their way to a Big Ten tournament championship. Watch out for them. And the 8 is Miami. The 9, Michigan State. After that, nothing too notable. You guys look at this region, the Midwest region. Initial thoughts. The Big Ten could...
Yeah, it kind of stinks.
It's got a lot of players here.
I don't want to see Michigan go to that Sweet 16, but I really think they could cruise into the Sweet 16 and keep riding this high wave that they're on right now.
I bet Louisville right now is shaking in their boots because, I don't know who Jacksonville State is, but I imagine they're going to beat them, and that shouldn't be too tough a test. And then, Michigan.
Well, you want to talk about Kemba imitators. Derek Walton's a real Kemba imitator right now. I mean, this guy's played a lot of basketball, too. He's a freshman on that Michigan team with Nick Stauskas that were really, really good. Let's talk about... And I don't know. The Big Ten has had a down year by all the professional folks' standards, but I'm not so sure that once we see this national tournament play itself out, the Big Ten won't make a good showing of itself.
I agree.
Whether it be Michigan, Wisconsin, Purdue, even Kevin's beloved Maryland Terrapins.
Is that just based on the theory that the Big Ten teams just all beat each other up all year long?
Yeah. And based on the amount of basketball that these guys have played postseason wise, I think maybe with the exception of Purdue, these are all teams, even Michigan State, which is really young, but still Izzo, barring last year's 215 upset, Izzo's taken these guys to play a lot of tournament games in pressure situations, and I just think that that's going to prove itself. It's going to play out positively for at least one or two of them. I could see a Purdue or Michigan State losing in the first round. Certainly, one of them's not going to have a good tournament. I wouldn't go so far as to say all of the Big Ten teams bet on them, but it would not surprise me one lick if we saw some Big Ten team make a run to the Elite Eight. I bet you, there you go, put it on the board. At least one, maybe two Illinois Big Ten teams in the Elite Eight.
I agree. I think from that top half of the bracket, Purdue and Michigan State, I wouldn't count either of those teams out.
Certainly not.
Because a team like Kansas has played so many close games this year, whether they're winning or losing. just the fact that their opponents always seem to have a shot and they're never completely out makes me think that Michigan State could really give them a tough run in that second round. And
Michigan State's such a funny team, too, because the players are so inexperienced. They're so young. They have virtually no depth. And then their coach is like a god of March. So it's just weird.
Similar to Kansas in a way because they have all those freshmen playing and they don't really have much of a system. Everybody is kind of
balls.
Yeah, exactly. They all do their own thing, and then at the end of the day, it comes together.
I'll tell you my sleeper team in this region. That's Rhode Island. Just won the Atlantic 10 championship, beat VCU. I like them. I like them a lot. They can shoot. They can shoot the three, which you need to be able to do in March. I see them as a Sweet 16 team. Not gonna lie. I see them knocking off those Ducks. I think Oregon is a fake team. Remember they were. I forgot this. They were a number 1 seed last year.
Yes.
The Oregon Ducks were. I totally forgot that. I can't remember anything about them. If you're not in the Pac-10, if you're not in the, well, I guess it is the Pac-10, isn't it? Pac-12. If you're not in the Pac-12 and you're not, if you're in the Pac-12 and you're not named Arizona and UCLA, don't come at me. Like, just get out of here.
I think Oregon's gonna have a tough go as well.
Oh my gosh, it is Oregon. This is okay. Continue.
Hey, I'm going off how it's spelled, all right?
That's fair.
But either way,
You're gonna be Oregon from this show if you keep saying it that way.
hey, get rid of me, all right?
Flamed.
But either way, I don't think that they're gonna get. I could definitely see Rhode Island upsetting them as well, just because of the most recent injury to one of their starters too. I think they're gonna have a tough time getting past Rhode Island, and if that Michigan or Louisville, let's say, in that Sweet 16 matchup.
I say Doug McDermott comes back and plays for Creighton. No one even realizes they scoot past Oregon and they have to play Michigan and lose.
Picks for this region, I think we get Michigan, Kansas in the Elite Eight. I think the Wolverines could be making a Final Four appearance, but the Jayhawks have got the young Bucks that certainly this could be their year. But those two teams, I like those two teams in the Elite Eight. I think Louisville is the weakest 2 seed in this whole tournament.
The bold prediction for me is Purdue and Michigan. A good old Big Ten showdown. Wouldn't mind seeing that.
That's good. Yeah, I agree with Peter. Except I like Kansas into the Final Four. I think I do think Michigan makes it to the Elite Eight. But that should be an interesting region. And finally, we move to the South, the dirty, dirty South. And we've just got a couple of minutes, but for as interesting as some of these other regions are, this one, I think your higher seeds aren't very good. There's no team. I mean, maybe Dayton, Wichita State, some people would say, but they'd have to play Kentucky in the second round. There's not as many. The 8-9's not as interesting. Minnesota's not a 5 seed. They shouldn't be. I don't really think Butler's a 4 seed. Like, there's a lot there that's weird to me, but the 1 through 3 are incredible.
Yes, you mean when you say higher seeds, you mean higher numbered seeds.
Sorry, yeah.
Right, because really, if you think anybody other than the 1, 2, or 3 seed is going to come out of this region, you're probably not have not watched enough basketball in the last 4 or 5 months. Kentucky is a terrific number 2 seed. UCLA is the best 3 seed in the bracket. UNC as the 1 seed is not as good as Villanova and probably not as good as Kansas. Obviously got their guys. It's Roy Williams, whatever. But I see that. I think that the winner of that UCLA Kentucky Sweet 16 game is going to win this region.
I think so too, because UNC is going to absolutely just slide into the Elite Eight. I mean, just moonwalk there. Because look, you're playing, Texas Southern, going to wreck them. Arkansas or Seton Hall, no problem there. Then you're probably either playing Minnesota or Butler to get to the Elite Eight. Are you kidding me? I mean, they are going to skate right in. And then you're either playing Kentucky or UCLA. And after playing all those trash teams, it's time to wake up, boys. I don't think Roy Williams' squad does it. I think whoever wins between UCLA and Kentucky gets to the Final Four. Although I hate his dad, I hope it's I hope it's Lonzo Ball and UCLA, because I think they're a lot of fun to watch, but it could easily be Kentucky too.
With that in mind, I really don't want to see UCLA make a run at all. I want this storyline to just end right now.
Kent State knocks them off.
Exactly. Let's go Kentucky then. Kentucky can come out of this region because I don't want to have to follow Lonzo. Simple as that.
Final thought, who wins it all?
I think it could be a 1 seed. I'm going to go Villanova or Kansas.
I'm just going to repeat that sentence I just said. The winner of that Sweet 16 game between UCLA and Kentucky.
Ooh, that's a really good pick. I'll I'll take Illinois in the NIT. This has been Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1. Thanks a bunch for tuning in. Like I said, anything I said, don't let it change the way you fill out your bracket. The madness is about to begin, folks. It's going to be a lot of fun. Grab a few beers, sit on your couch, and watch plenty of basketball this March. I'm going to Europe, so I'll be gone for a while, but I'll see you I'll talk to you in a few weeks. This has been Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1. Thanks a bunch for tuning in.